Hey everyone, this is David Pike, the Motorcity Mechanic, back with another video. Now today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to start with a problem and we're going to go all the way to the end and find out what the conclusion is. Now don't get me wrong, we're not going to go specific step by step in this one. We're going to talk about a cause and an effect. So go ahead and check it out. Alright, let's try to summarize it as much as possible because otherwise I'll be rambling about this because there's a lot of details. Now specifics, 2008 Dodge Grand Caravan, 3.8 liter, towed in. Obvious issue with the heater hose plastic joint. Customer had replaced it previously. The joint portion with a replacement didn't last. It ended up cracking and breaking as well. So that's why I ended up at the shop. Now, I go out to the vehicle. I cannot start because the battery's dead because the hazard lights have been on the entire time while they're waiting for the wrecker. Hook up a jump box. There are no warning lights, no check engine light. Start it up, of course. It's running rough. At that point, I grabbed the customer, I grabbed the service writer, I explained the situation to both of them. The customer says it's been running rough since he purchased it, but he would like me to check it out once I get it fixed as far as the coolant leak. Okay, so I've made it known there was a possible issue. Done my part. Drive the vehicle around. At that point, I cannot coolant pressure test the system because I've got an obvious leak. Pressure definitely going to come out where that split is. So I've got to fix that. I repair the hose using the metal kit like I've showed so many times in the videos. I buy them in packs of 5 now. This is the ultimate way to fix it. But nonetheless, I fix it. At that point, I'm doing an air evac where I actually pull a vacuum on the coolant system, hoping to suck coolant from a bottle into there and have no air. Well, it will not hold a vacuum. I know there's got to be another issue. So at that point, I can do a pressure test with the coolant. Unfortunately, it's not holding pressure, which we've learned already, and I don't see any external leaks. Now I know I've definitely got problems. I go ahead and grab the customer, bring them over there. I pull the dipstick out. We can tell that it's got a little oily, mixy discoloration to it for sure, and also that it's running rough. And finally the check engine light comes on saying cylinders 1 and 3. I go ahead and warn the customer, you've got internal engine issues. So once I knew it was cylinder 1 and 3 skipping, at that point I went ahead and took the spark plugs out of both cylinders. I looked on the back side with a light and I could actually see coolant in number 1. At that point I grabbed one of my little cameras, waterproof case of course, put it on the back side of the engine. At that point, I do a quick turn of the engine, I get a little bit of coolant out, and then I go ahead and spin over a few more revolutions, and that's when all the antifreeze came out right onto the camera. So we know we actually got coolant physically in cylinder number 1. Also, when the engine's running, it's smoking as well. I've got white smoke coming out the tailpipe, so we know not only is it in the cylinder, but it's also being burned because it's in there, and it's actually turning to a white cloud coming out the tailpipe. Also, when we lift the vehicle up and drain some of the oil, we get the milky mess coming out, letting us know 2 things have decided to join, oil and antifreeze. They're not supposed to, and this is the product of their union, a nice milky substance pouring out the oil drain. So now we know, obvious internal engine issues. Now that the van is back in the shop again, now what I do is move on to actually removing that engine and transmission assembly. Now keep in mind, this video is not about the removal of those 2 items. This is about a simple cause turning into something more elaborate, such as we already know that the cause of the coolant leak started out with that heater hose plastic joint, and because it was driven too far for too long and the coolant got too hot, that it caused further damage. We're going to be taking that engine and trans out because the engine's getting replaced, and we're going to tear down the portion that we need to inspect on the old one so I can show you what the final effect was for causing it to overheat for too long. Now, when I remove the engine on this, I like to do it while it's still bolted to the transaxle. I've got it to where everything's unhooked. I've got it slammed to the ground on a pallet that's got wheels. I just lift the vehicle up. I've got it blocked off well enough to where it's not going to topple over this way out. Now, once I've got the van all the way up, I'm going to get a ratchet strap and go around it, and I'm going to secure it to that pallet. But for right now, in order to get it out, so I've got clearance, I left this strap off. So that's the way I like to do it. I like to do it as a complete assembly. It's not much more as far as steps, but you can get to everything a whole lot easier now. Now that engine and transmission sitting on the ground, what I want to do is, before I unbolt it and swap it out with the replacement, I want to go ahead and take that right side cylinder head off, because I'm mainly wanting to know what happened to cylinders 1 and 3. We knew we had coolant in there. Now I want to see exactly why. I want to take that head off, put it on the bench. We're going to talk about cleaning it, what to look for, and also other possible items that may have been affected by being severely overheated. So what I've done is gone ahead and cleaned the surface of the cylinder head. I'm going to get all the old gasket residue off, make sure it's nice and smooth, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a straight edge. This is actually what this is for. This is a straight edge. It's not just a straight piece of metal. This is a machined, calibrated piece of tool. And I'm going to lay it across. The main areas I'm going to be looking at is in between the cylinders to see if there's any warpage. It's touching on both ends, and what I'll do is I'll go down the line. I can actually shine a flashlight from the back side, see if the light goes through, and also I can grab a feeler gauge set. Now I can get up under the edge, and if it is warped, we'll see how much it is warped. This is one of those areas between the cylinder. We got cylinder 1 here, cylinder 3 here. What we want to look is right here in this area. I'll shine the light on the back side. You can actually see light. There should be no light whatsoever. So now we know we do have a warped cylinder. Now I can get the filler gauge out, and we can go ahead and measure about how much it is. So get up under here. I'm going to apply some pressure to the tool to keep it flat, stop it from rocking. And I'm going to slide the filler gauge up under there and see if I can feel a little bit of resistance. And not so much here. Let me change over to a different size. Alright, now this one's going to be 11 thousandths of an inch, and that's got pretty good drag there. So yeah, we're at 11 thousandths of an inch warpage, which is extremely excessive. That's how you check it. Now, the way most late model engines are put together, they use a multi-layered steel head gasket, no longer any kind of composite materials. So when people tell you that you blew a head gasket, most likely that's not going to be an accurate statement, because these gaskets will not blow. They are multiple layers of steel that are sandwiched together and compressed when you torque down the cylinder head. What you're going to find is that the head will actually warp. Now once the head warps, then of course coolant can go from passage to cylinder, stuff like that. Now this one got hot enough that it actually rippled. Kind of hard to see, but it actually rippled the gasket right here. Did not blow it, but it did allow coolant to go from cylinder to cylinder and from passage to passage. So it definitely did some damage to the gasket, but it did not blow the gasket. And move the light just right. Maybe I can get you that reflection again. There you go. See a little rippleness right there? That's what happened. You can actually feel it. You don't feel it on the back side, but you feel it on the front side. And of course, we already know that cylinder head's warped. So when someone says blown head gasket, you just need to put a gasket on. You need to go ahead and start questioning that, because it's got an aluminum head. You need to know what kind of head gasket it is using. If it's multi-layer, it will not blow. The cylinder head will warp, or you will get cracks in the cylinder of the block. Now when it comes to a severely overheated engine, much like the one in the van that we're working on, there are things that you can check and there are things you cannot check. I showed you with a straight edge that we can make sure that the cylinder head is either straight or warped. We also can measure to see how much is out as far as out of specs, whether or not anything can be done with that head. Now you could send that head off and have it machined to where it's perfectly flat, but there's other things you need to keep in mind. One is if the temperature gets high enough, it can actually cause damage to the piston rings. The piston rings have the ability to actually spread out and make contact with the cylinder walls as the piston's moving up and down. If the heat gets so intense, it can actually cause the piston rings to no longer want to spread out and make contact with the cylinder walls. Instead, it actually stays collapsed to the piston. So you end up putting everything back together, hoping that you fixed it after having the head machined and flattened out perfectly. you end up finding that you've got low compression on a cylinder, and then you check further into it and kind of find out now you've got a piston ring issue. So there are some worst case scenarios, even more than what we've seen today. We don't know what the piston rings are like in this engine. We know that the head's warped. So that's another reason to opt for a either removal and complete rebuild, a reman unit, or even a used one with a warranty. So yes, if you're gonna just shave the head, put it back on, be careful. It might bite you in the rear. It doesn't happen every time, but every now and then it will. So definitely give that warning to your customer, or if this is your vehicle, keep that in mind depending on which route you go as far as trying to do the repair. So as you saw, something simple turned into something major. What could have been a $20 repair on the side of the road ended up being a $4,000 or $5,000 repair at a shop. Main thing you need to worry about in a situation like this is keep an eye on your gauges. If you see any gauges max out, usually a warning chime's going to come on with a specific light, maybe even your check engine light. At that point, you need to try to pull over somewhere where it's safe, somewhere where you won't hurt yourself or the vehicle. Don't try to make it to the next exit. Try not to make it to the house, to a repair shop. The longer you drive it, the more chance you risk of causing further damage, which is exactly what happened to this vehicle. Now, there are going to be times and situations where you can't. I fully understand it. Busy freeway, late at night, your wife's driving, whatever. She wants to get somewhere safe. She wants to get somewhere, or you want to get somewhere where you don't get run over and hurt. I get it. But just remember now, if you do, eventually you may run into further problems and further repairs. So try your best to pull over, fix it on the side of the road if possible, or have it towed to a repair shop where it can be taken care of. That way you don't come out as much pocket money in the end. So at this point, this is Frank. Thumbs up on YouTube. Don't forget you can check me out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. And if you got any comments or suggestions about today's video or anything Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram, always feel free to email me at david@motorcitymechanic.com, and I will try to get back to you in a timely manner. Once again, as always, thanks for watching these videos.